Hey y'all, welcome to John Splain, where I give you my take on trending topics, political news, and things that just generally affect our lives every day. Today I want to talk about gerrymandering in light of Prop 50 just passing in California, where the voters in California decided, in an effort to counteract Texas's redistricting, have decided that California will be allowed to draw a new congressional map. Texas did that earlier this year. So other states are considering taking similar action, it sounds like. And, you know, this one's Democrat, this one's Republican, this one's Republican, this one's Democrat, down the line. It's just possibly going to be an arms race for the House of Representatives for 2026 midterm elections. And so I kind of went down this rabbit hole because I saw Missouri, their new map, and I was like curious about how they just they split a major metro area in Kansas City. They split it in three different districts, and I was like, "Oh, that's diabolical." I mean, I didn't know you had it in you, Republicans. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I guess if you're gonna do it and you're gonna try to um, take an area that's traditionally gonna vote blue and split those votes off into three different districts like that, that's a good way of doing it, right? So I got to doing a little bit more research on the matter, and not just for Missouri but in general. But to look at Missouri again, this here Kansas City area here is pretty populated. It's kind of hard to show you. The left here is actually Kansas, the state of Kansas, and then the right, coming down from this river here and over and then down. This is all kind of like the metro Kansas City, Missouri area. And so there's four counties in that area, and they're all, you can see the darker red, it's more populated, and those areas are going to be split up into three different districts. And the attempt is going to be to have Missouri have seven Republican representatives instead of just six. So the Democrats will lose one seat there if that all goes through the way they expect, which may not sound like a lot, one seat, but if it happens in a few places, then it will thwart any attempt, I guess, by the Democrats to pull another California and grab up, like, multiple seats like that. It'll kind of like minimize those effects. Or, conversely, if Republican states are able to do this here and there, it'll add up to a bigger advantage for them, right? So, I don't, it's kind of it's an iffy deal for me because I'm not sure that it's a game that I would, as a Republican, want them to play. But let's see what this news anchor here has to say about it.
Missouri's state legislature has begun the process to join Texas and California in redrawing the state's congressional maps. Republican Governor Mike Kehoe called for a special session to begin Wednesday afternoon. The legislature is expected to pass a bill that would give Republicans in the state an opportunity to win 7 seats in next year's midterm elections. Right now, Missouri is represented by 6 Republicans and 2 Democrats. CBS News political director Finn Gomez joins us with more on all of this. And Finn, as they say, deja vu all over again as we talk about Missouri. But how does Missouri's redistricting effort compare with what we've already seen play out in Texas and California?
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, at the crux of it, Nancy, this is something that is it's a process that's continual. We saw it started with Texas, then go to California, now it's moving to Missouri. And in that special session that was convened today, as you mentioned, called by the Republican Governor Mike Kehoe specifically to redraw congressional district maps, now to one that are a new map designed to favor Republicans. But it will target the Kansas City's 5th district. The proposed, quote, Missouri First map would divide Kansas City into 3 districts, diluting the traditional Democratic stronghold held by Congressman Emmanuel Cleaver. Cleaver's an 11-term congressman and member of the Congressional Black Caucus. Critics have denounced this as partisan gerrymandering that could flip a 6-2 Republican-Democratic split to 7-1 in favor of Republicans, all because of the White House, to acquiesce to the demands of the White House. Cleaver called it, quote, a stinky plan. President Trump posted his support for this new Missouri map, posting on social media that Missouri voters will have, quote, the tremendous opportunity to elect an additional MAGA Republican in the 2026 midterm elections. As you see there, Nancy, this is all about the midterms.
Absolutely. I remember when we first started talking about what was happening in Texas, and I asked you why people who don't live in Texas should care about all of this, and you said it's all about the midterms. Given that, what do you see happening in the midterm elections just over a year from now?
I mean, look, this redistricting could tilt control. It could tilt the tilt of the balance of power, frankly. Democrats need only a few seats, if you remember, Nancy, to flip the House. But with these Republican map making strategies and efforts, they reduce the Democratic opportunities in a year from now. And I do predict there will be a messy political domino effect. You're already seeing other states like Indiana, Ohio, potentially Florida, looking to these other states who have made these changes, and then there's going to be this cause and effect. There'll be other states who are looking to do so. Democratic states, Maryland, there's been more interest there in potentially changing the map. So there's going to be a lot of this, and it's going to be a lot of this going forward. And we're over a year, as you mentioned, over a year away until those midterms.
All right, these conversations will continue then, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, the argument I always hear from Republicans is, well, look at Illinois. I mean, Illinois is just the worst example you could ever have. And so here's a look at Illinois. And what they've done here is this whole strip here from East St. Louis up through Springfield and then across, it's designed to disenfranchise any rural voters that are in these big blocks here. That's the argument. And then there's also an area in Chicago. It's called the Earmuffs. I don't know if it's still done the way it was, but it was the 4th district here. I don't know if you can see that, but well, anyway. They call it the earmuffs because it's kind of shaped like that. But something I read here that I found interesting was that when this is 2020, and they were saying this article from the Chicago Change, Illinois. I don't know. They were saying it's about fairness because in the earmuff, you've got 2 separate Latino groups that aren't connected. And so the earmuff allows those 2 groups to be connected. And therefore they can choose, to their representation. And I'm like, that's just crazy to me that you think, first of all, that all Latinos are the same, which is not true. But that we are now not even interested in the idea of assimilation when you come to this country. It's like we're going to have whole groups of people who have their own communities that don't have to integrate in any way, shape, or form, and then they get their representation. So it's like what are we going to have, like the Somali district of America or the, Yemeni district of America? Like, what is this? Are we Americans or are we not? And so why are we carving out whole areas that are just for representation of people based on their identity politics or their identity. That to me is a crazy argument and one that I completely reject. But speaking about gerrymandering in general, I my first response, my first thought is that if Republicans are going to do this, they should be very careful because in my experience, Republicans they want to try to follow the rules. I know that every individual person is different, and there's plenty of Republicans who don't follow rules. But in the political sphere, I think of Republicans as trying to like maintain the status quo, the decorum, and all that stuff. And particularly on social issues, I consider the Democrats to be the ones that are more willing to push the envelope. So whatever is on the fringe of acceptable is where they're willing to push that line. So if the Republicans are willing to go over that line, well then the Democrats have license to go way over the line. And so getting into a pissing match with the Democrats over something that you really don't want is dangerous for Republicans if they want to try to follow the rules. Do you want to win or do you want to win the right way? Typically, I would say that Republicans want to try to win while maintaining the values and traditions that they're supposed to uphold, and Democrats just want to win. But that's my perspective. In this particular issue, though, I don't know that Republicans are innocent in any way, shape, or form. I think that both parties are very guilty of gerrymandering and always have been. And, the Kansas City thing is a perfect example of how I would say Republicans are trying to slice up a major metro area that's dim leaning and try to take some of those votes and kind of water them down, right? So I don't know that sits right with me. And I just don't love it for anybody to do that. You get into a pissing match with all these other states who are going to, some Dem, some Republican, back and forth, back and forth. It's a mess. It's a mess to me, This is the Republicans tried to do this in 2012 apparently, and you can see how much redder it would have been by just kind of carving in to some of the Democratic areas. And so, like I said, nobody's innocent in this one. This is Utah, Salt Lake City, right there in the middle. It's getting carved into a bunch of different districts. I assume Salt Lake must have, younger people and Democratic voters. I don't know. But my point is, Republicans are guilty, and Democrats are guilty too. Very, very guilty on both sides. I would not like to see this continue, but I don't have any faith that it will will stop. And part of the reason is because these odd shapes, they look like very obvious cases of gerrymandering. Like I was saying, oh, you're going to split Kansas City into 3 parts, and so you're taking major population centers and you're spreading their votes out to make them be less valuable. But actually, the districts have to have, I guess, equal populations in them, and so it's not necessarily so cut and dry. I mean, you can't just have, I guess, rural areas if there's not enough people in those areas to make up a whole voting block. You would have to take some population centers. I'm not trying to make excuses here. I'm just saying that there's a little bit of nuance to it, beyond just the maps look funny and so it's obviously somebody's kind of like rigging the system. I don't know. It seems to me that if you just want to win, then doing this as much as you can, while you're in power, is kind of a strategy that Trump and a lot of politicians would employ and would like to see employed. But from what I can tell, every time the Democrats get back in power, they will use, just like if they did if they got rid of the filibuster. Terrible idea. I'm sorry, but it's not a good idea, because they will absolutely be thrilled when they get back in power. They will be thrilled, and they will just cram all kinds of craziness. Puerto Rico and D.C. and the Supreme Court. It'll all just be straight blue. But yeah, I mean, the whole gerrymandering thing, it's an interesting topic. I know a little bit more about it than I did before, that's for sure. And I don't know what I don't know. If you if you kind of catch my drift, I think that cooler heads might prevail, but the way that our country is kind of forming right now, it's a little bit concerning to me that we might all just go ahead and let's just all just gerrymander and turn the red states redder and the blue states bluer, and then people will vote with their feet, right? They will move out. I think a lot of people are going to move out of New York City now, and then maybe other people will move into New York City, and then other states, things will happen similarly, especially when you consider that, like, I wouldn't have cared living in a blue state. I wouldn't have cared if I was in a blue state. I'd just be like, oh, whatever. Until they started getting to the point where they were talking about taking your kids away. If you don't allow your kid to define who they are as a person, well, then you're not fit to be their parent anymore, and the state will take them away from you in blue states. And to me, that's where parents are going to draw the line and say, I got to get out of here. I can't be around that. I can't take that risk that the state will take my kids away from me. It's just not worth living in a place like that anymore. So they're going to move to Florida and Texas and wherever else. And then the people who feel the opposite are going to move to the deeply blue states. And so then what happens? You've already seen the Democrats aren't even radical enough for their youth. They want socialism. They want communism. They want the farther left farther left than the Democrats have ever gone before. And if there's just completely blue blocks and completely red blocks of the country now, then that allows for the bluer areas to not have any fear of embracing socialism. And then what are you starting to see now on the right? If you want to call them the right, you're starting to see people who are not fit for polite society. That's the way we would always describe them in the past, and their ideas are starting to take hold with some of the younger, far right, if you will, youth. And so the next generation is going to be what? Extremely far left or extremely far right. And then what? You know what I'm saying? Like this can get out of control in a generation. I could see that easily happening. And if you've got two extremes, and those are the two groups that are like in power, they're the ones who are coming up, and they're going to be in the House of Representatives. They're going to be part of the ruling class, if you will. I don't see how that is all one unified country at that point. I'm not saying it'll be a civil war. I'm not saying that it'll come to that, but what do you end up with? It's not like the country that we have always known. And, maybe that means that we have 4 parties instead of just 2, which is, not typically a good system. Or maybe the 2 current parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, get swallowed up by their far extreme edges. And doing this redistricting stuff can only help further that along if it's going to happen. I'm not in love with this, to be honest, and it's likely that this kind of stuff has always just been happening in the background, and we're just more plugged into everything now, and our politicians are more hyperbolic, and they're more on TV or on the internet all the time. And so we see every little thing like this as the next big deal, not to mention the fact that most Democrats are, their religion is the Democratic Party, or like their religion is their politics. Their politics is their religion, I should say. So obviously it's very important to them. But yeah, it's a tough one to kind of navigate, to understand what really is the right call here. As a Republican, I try to say we should be more prudent with these kind of things and just kind of like let cooler heads prevail and so on and so forth. But maybe there's an argument to be made that, win while you can and damn the consequences, or win so much that you stomp out the other side's momentum. I think that that's unlikely. I think that you have to win hearts and minds, as they would say, which is the slow process. It's not going to be an easy victory. And if we ever get to the point where our far extreme right and our far extreme left are the ruling classes in our society, then we might end up in a civil war. And then what happens is our enemies come in and sense our weakness, try to pick us apart, or they just, choose a side and try to exploit us, as they did during our civil war previously. So anyway, it's kind of like I don't know, I'm kind of bummed on this one. I don't love this story. I don't think this is exactly going where I had hoped when I first started looking into this, but it is what it is. Anyway, if you like this content, please subscribe, and share and like and all that good stuff. Have a good day. Thank you.